Doing? Thanks for having me. My name's Elias Garcia. I'm one of the owners of Pac West Marine. We are the local Yanmar dealer here in San Diego, along with Kohler Marine Generators, Westerbeek Generators, and Universal Diesels. We also specialize in some of the smaller ZF Hearth transmissions also. We've been in business now since 1994, 28 years on Shelter Island, so we've seen a lot and dealt a lot with Yanmar over the years. How many folks here have Yanmars in their boats? No, for the most part, you guys have what engines? We're Isuzu diesels, okay. Diesel engine's a diesel engine. They're all cool, just slightly different than the others. So our expertise is more Yanmar than anything else. But we'll talk a little bit today about maintenance and maybe spares you guys would like to take. The group's small enough, so if there's any questions as I'm talking, please go ahead and answer or ask me questions. So we'll start with maintenance. Maintenance, besides what you guys are doing every year, which is oil filter changes, fuel filters, impellers, belts, that's your basic service that you do at least once a year on your engines. Every few years, I normally suggest on a Yanmar about every 6-7 years you want to deal with your engine's cooling system. It's a big part of that engine, and it's what's going to keep that engine running cool and fresh. So when I say service cooling system, it's not just running maybe a descaling solution through the coolers, but actually removing the coolers and servicing them. How many people have like 4 JHs in their boats? Those 4-cylinder Yanmars or small 3 cylinders, is it? Okay. So this is typically an exhaust manifold off a 4JH. Very similar to Yanmar's 3YMs or 3GMs. It's just a smaller size. Yanmar incorporates their exhaust manifolds and heat exchangers all in one. Isuzu may have a separate heat exchanger separate of the manifold, which is basically doing the same thing, but to save weight and space, Yanmar incorporates it all in one piece. Big component here. So you have salt water flowing through one end, coming out the other, and coolant flowing through the other end. Acts much like a radiator in a car, but it's seawater's cooling the fresh water. So you have, on some applications too, on some of the 4-cylinders, you'll also have an engine oil cooler that's also cooled by salt water. And those coolers, again, will need periodically get serviced. So when we say get serviced, we normally at Pac West Marine will come to your boat and remove this component, and we'll remove the exhaust mixing elbow, which might look similar to this, or on a 3-cylinder will be smaller and look something similar to this. So we'll remove those components, bring them in shop, take this apart, and clean the core. And what you want to do when you do that is you clean the core, but you're also replacing and servicing the O-rings and gaskets that seal this. So these, you still get, these don't carry any zincs. Yanmar, or most of their freshwater cooling systems or saltwater don't carry any zincs on their engines. Isuzus will probably have zincs in their in the heat exchanger or oil coolers. It will be pencil zinc somewhere. But Yanmars don't require any. You still get salt buildup in here, as any cooler will, but you don't get the erosion you normally see in other applications. The end caps are brass, the core is brass, saltwater pump is brass. Everything saltwater flows through is basically brass. So you don't get the erosion that you would normally sometimes get in some other applications. But what happens on some of these is after time, the O-rings and gaskets, you'll get salt water that seeps past them, and then that can start attacking the aluminum manifold part of it on the heat exchanger and on, or possibly the oil cooler. So just running solution through it does help clean it, but occasionally you need to take these apart and replace the gaskets and seals to prevent erosion of the actual aluminum part of it. So if, and usually you don't see overheating conditions when it starts to see buildup. Sometimes you'll see buildup around the end caps of salt. That's telling you that you're starting to seep a little bit of salt water past those gaskets and seals, so it could be time to get in there and do it. So if they haven't been apart in some 8 to 10 years, then it's a good time to get it done. Again, sometimes it doesn't even show overheating conditions. You still might be cooling efficiently because salt water's still flowing through there, cooling the fresh water efficiently. But if you leave it too prolonged, when you do get it apart, sometimes where the gaskets and seals seal, it's too far eroded to where you end up having to replace this component. So also another piece would be the exhaust mixing elbows. A lot of the 3-cylinder models have something similar to this. This normally will hold up about 5-6 years, and they will get carbon plugged on the exhaust side, and also saltwater side you build up corrosion internally. Sometimes they'll crack. So these hold up about 5 years, and again, sometimes they can look decently clean on the outside, but on the inside they get pretty plugged up on the exhaust side and on the saltwater side. So again, something to get serviced on that cooling system. This is another style for turbocharged 4JH Yanmar. Kind of same concept. Exhaust through the center, water here to cool it, out the exhaust to the manifold, or to the muffler, I'm sorry. So again, cooling systems, huge part of your engine's operation. These engines all hold up good. I mean, diesel engines for the most part all hold up very well. What's the killer is extreme overheat, loss of oil pressure, which doesn't happen very often, and or saltwater ingestion, usually up through the exhaust system. So you keep those things from happening, and your diesel engine should operate for thousands of hours. But usually what happens is one of those things happens, and you get sometimes catastrophic failures. Also, saltwater pumps. This is off, again, a 4-cylinder Yanmar. Most saltwater pumps have a weep hole. So when it starts to leak or the seal starts to go bad, you'll see a drip of water coming out. That tells you that your saltwater pump seal is starting to go bad. It could be still pumping plenty of water, it's still turning, the impeller's still turning, pushing water. So it's still working efficiently that way to cool the engine. But if it starts to leak, what it's telling you is the seal internally has gone bad and it's time to replace the pump. This particular pump bolts to the actual front cover or side cover of the engine. So after time in this particular pump, if left and not replaced or rebuilt, that salt water can make its way past the seals into the engine. So if you see your pump leak